In the gilded cages of unimaginable wealth and the shadowed corridors of hidden power, some stories remain deliberately buried for decades. They linger as whispers, as unsettling rumors, until the sheer weight of truth finally refuses to be silenced. This is one such story. We journey into the enigmatic life and horrific crimes of Jeffrey Epstein, a man who effortlessly navigated the highest echelons of society, rubbing shoulders with presidents, princes, and billionaires. His meticulously crafted facade of respectability, however, concealed a secret life of depravity so profound it would ultimately unravel into one of the most disturbing criminal cases in modern history, challenging our very understanding of justice and accountability.
Jeffrey Epstein entered the world in Brooklyn, New York in 1953, with no silver spoon in his mouth, no powerful lineage, and no inherited fortune to speak of. His early life was unremarkable, far from the opulent existence he would later command. Yet by his early 30s, a dramatic transformation had occurred. Epstein was suddenly, inexplicably, staggeringly wealthy. He presented himself as a sophisticated financier, a shrewd money manager for the ultra-rich, but the precise mechanisms of his fortune remained opaque. Investigators would tirelessly scrutinize his financial records for years, struggling to pinpoint exactly how he amassed such staggering sums. The air around him was thick with whispers, with unanswered questions, and a pervasive sense of something not quite right. Despite this undercurrent of mystery, Epstein continued his relentless ascent, acquiring lavish properties, sprawling mansions in the heart of New York City, sun-drenched estates in Palm Beach, elegant apartments in Paris, and even a secluded private island in the Caribbean. To the casual observer, he was the epitome of untouchable success.
Epstein's curated social world was a magnet for influence, a glittering web spun around power. He cultivated relationships with an astonishing array of figures: top politicians, members of royalty, Hollywood luminaries, and Wall Street titans. These weren't mere acquaintances. They were guests at his exclusive gatherings, part of his intimate circle. At the very nexus of this intricate social labyrinth stood Ghislaine Maxwell, a British socialite with deep connections to the establishment. She became his indispensable confidant, his closest associate, almost an extension of his own formidable will. Together, they orchestrated extravagant parties and intimate dinners, bringing together some of the most prominent individuals on the planet. But beneath the veneer of luxury, beneath the sophisticated banter and the clinking of champagne glasses, a horrifyingly darker reality was unfolding, a clandestine operation built on exploitation and abuse. The facade of Epstein's respectable life began to crack in the early 2000s, far from the polished marble floors of his Manhattan penthouse. In the sun-drenched town of Palm Beach, Florida, local police started receiving disturbing reports. A young, vulnerable teenage girl bravely came forward, recounting how she had been paid for massages that quickly escalated into sexual encounters with Epstein. Her testimony, harrowing and detailed, was just the beginning. Soon after, more girls, some as young as 14 years old, emerged with similar, terrifying accounts. The pattern was clear, the stories tragically consistent. Detectives painstakingly began to piece together a case that pointed towards not just isolated incidents, but a pervasive, systematic network of abuse. However, as the local investigation gained momentum and the evidence mounted, reaching the desks of federal prosecutors, something truly unexpected and deeply troubling occurred, foreshadowing the immense power Epstein wielded.
In 2008, the full weight of federal prosecution that many anticipated for Epstein mysteriously evaporated. Instead, he was offered and accepted a plea agreement that would become the subject of intense scrutiny and outrage for years to come. He pleaded guilty not to federal charges, but to state charges related to soliciting prostitution involving a minor. The sentence handed down was shockingly lenient, a mere 13 months in a county jail, a period further softened by a controversial provision. Epstein was granted permission to leave during the day for work release, essentially transforming his jail time into a part-time inconvenience. Crucially, many of his victims, the very individuals whose lives he had shattered, were never informed that the deal was even being contemplated, let alone finalized.
To critics, legal experts, and the public, it was an undeniable, glaring instance of justice being irrevocably bent by power and influence. The case, to all appearances, faded from public memory, and Epstein seemingly returned to his life of immense wealth and privilege, his dark secrets seemingly contained. But the story was far from over.
Years passed, and the echoes of the 2008 plea deal began to resonate anew. Driven by persistent journalists and a growing movement of brave individuals, the case was meticulously re-examined. Victims who had long been silenced by fear, shame, or systemic pressure began to find their voices. Their collective testimonies painted an even more horrifying picture than previously imagined. They described sophisticated recruitment networks, insidious manipulation tactics, and chilling threats that ensured their silence. They spoke of a powerful system, a network of complicity, seemingly designed to protect Epstein and enable his horrific crimes. As these accounts gained traction and were amplified by investigative reporting, public outrage surged. The question, once whispered, now became a thunderous roar, impossible for society to ignore. How had Jeffrey Epstein, a man guilty of such heinous acts, managed to evade true justice for so long? The answer lay buried beneath layers of wealth and influence, waiting to be unearthed.
Then, in July 2019, the quiet simmering of outrage erupted into an international firestorm. Everything changed. Federal agents apprehended Jeffrey Epstein at a New Jersey airport, a dramatic capture that sent shockwaves across the globe. This time, the charges were not merely state misdemeanors, they were severe and unequivocal: sex trafficking of minors. Prosecutors alleged a chilling pattern of abuse that spanned not just years, but even decades, extending far beyond the Palm Beach incidents. The world watched in rapt attention as one of the most high-profile, powerful criminal cases in recent memory began to unfold. Epstein was swiftly taken into custody and held at the Metropolitan Correctional Center in Manhattan, a notoriously secure federal detention facility, awaiting trial. For many, this second arrest signaled a profound shift, a long-delayed promise that true, uncompromising justice was finally within reach for the countless victims who had suffered in silence.
The anticipation for Epstein's trial, a moment many believed would finally expose the full extent of his network, was palpable. But then, in August 2019, shocking news broke that would forever alter the course of the case and ignite a global storm of suspicion and conspiracy theories. Jeffrey Epstein was found dead in his jail cell. The official ruling was suicide by hanging, yet almost immediately a cascade of troubling questions flooded in. Reports emerged of broken surveillance cameras, of sleeping guards who had failed to perform mandatory checks, and of a general disregard for established safety protocols designed precisely to prevent such an event. For countless individuals, the circumstances surrounding his death felt profoundly suspicious, too convenient, too improbable. Speculation rapidly overshadowed facts, and the official narrative was met with widespread skepticism, fueling rampant conspiracy theories across the world. Once again, the elusive truth felt just out of reach, shrouded in doubt and unanswered questions.
Even after Jeffrey Epstein's death, the relentless pursuit of justice and accountability did not cease. In fact, it intensified. Attention broadened from Epstein himself to his vast network of associates, his complex financial structures, and the powerful connections he had so carefully cultivated. Investigators worked tirelessly to unravel the threads he left behind. A significant breakthrough came in 2021 when Ghislaine Maxwell, Epstein's closest confidant and enabler, was convicted on federal charges related to sex trafficking minors for him. Her conviction, a direct result of the courage of survivors who testified, offered a crucial measure of accountability and brought a semblance of closure to many. However, despite the significant legal victory, a multitude of profound questions continue to haunt the case. Who else provided essential assistance in building and maintaining Epstein's insidious network? How was he able to sustain such a high level of protection from law enforcement and the justice system for so many years? And perhaps most agonizingly, could this devastating tragedy have been stopped much, much sooner?
The Jeffrey Epstein scandal transcended the specifics of one man's horrific crimes. It forced a global reckoning. It laid bare, in the most painful and public way, the profound failures embedded within our institutions. Failures in law enforcement, which in some instances overlooked or minimized the early warnings. Failures within the justice system itself, which allowed a powerful predator to escape with a shockingly lenient sentence, and failures across broader social institutions that, intentionally or unintentionally, protected the privileged and powerful. Most importantly, however, this case illuminated and amplified the extraordinary courage of the survivors. These individuals, predominantly young women who endured unimaginable trauma, refused to remain silent. Their brave, unwavering voices transformed a hidden crime, once shrouded in secrecy and intimidation, into an international demand for justice, irrevocably changing the landscape of how society perceives and responds to abuse.
Jeffrey Epstein's story, though deeply disturbing, offers far more than just a chilling true crime narrative. It serves as a stark, enduring lesson about power without accountability, about the insidious nature of silence that protects abuse, and about the long, arduous, yet ultimately essential fight for truth. While Epstein himself will never stand trial for the full scope of his crimes, the ripple effect of his actions and his exposure continues to shape laws, reform investigative procedures, and profoundly heightened public awareness around the world. And perhaps the most important, resonant lesson we can take from this dark chapter is a powerful one. No matter how immense the wealth, no matter how influential the connections, no matter how deep the secrets are buried, the truth, in its own relentless way, has an undeniable ability to ultimately come to light. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more updates and in-depth true crime stories.